So one day, at a stoplight, I was just sitting there. And, sometimes when you're in the shower, when you're just waking up from a night of sleep, when you're driving in the car, you've completely checked out. What I know now is that is when your intuition has space to move, has space to tell you things that you didn't already know. And I had one of those moments sitting at that stoplight where I just heard clear as a bell. And this was not I was not a highly, or what I would think is like clairvoyant or highly intuitive. I had high EQ, but I was not necessarily an intuitive, as they say. So this was sort of a new experience for me to sit there at the stoplight and hear the words, "You need energy healing." And I had no idea what that was. Now, at the time, I was definitely a woman of faith. I was very active in my local church where my employer was actually faith-based. So, it was not the most unusual thing. That's where I would think that, it was a message from God or a higher power, intuition. You can choose, whatever adventure you want to go on. But essentially where I was located is I was sitting right across the street from an energy medicine practice. And that ended up being where I went for my first set of sessions. That ended up changing my life. So I just heard those words. I asked around, didn't know what it was, Googled it, found the clinic, and sure enough, it was right across the street from the stoplight where I was sitting.
Did you know that despite making up 50% of sellers, women hold just 30% of the sales leadership roles? It's not a pipeline problem. That's a promotion problem. Welcome to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast, where we make the new rules of success for high-performing women in sales. And I'm your host, Amy Evans, sales leader turned executive coach. After 25 years in the trenches at Salesforce, EDP, and startups, I now help ambitious sales managers step into second-line leadership roles. If you are ready to lead with authority, earn what you're worth, and make a bigger impact, you are in the right place. Click follow so the next episode will be waiting for you. So welcome back to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. Today's conversation is going to stretch you in the best way. We are talking about energy, and not just like the energy that you spend cranking through your calendar all day, every day, but the kind that actually fills you. And if you've ever ended a day wondering why you are so exhausted, even though you've checked off all the things on your boxes, I don't know if anybody's had a day like that, or, why you're doing everything right and you still feel like disconnected from yourself. This episode is for you today. My guest today is going to open a door that perhaps you haven't walked through before. And I want to invite you to listen with curiosity, because what she has to share can really transform the way that you lead and the way you live. It did that for me. So let me get to my guest. My guest is Suzanne Wistrick. And she is the founder and leading practitioner, I should say, of Energy Healing of Atlanta. And Suzanne helps executives, entrepreneurs, and high capacity professionals release unconscious energies that keep them burned out and disconnected from who they really are. Her own journey through corporate consulting, nonprofit leadership, and her own health crisis led her to discover this life-changing the power of energy healing. And since then, she's guided clients in releasing those stuck patterns and reclaiming their vitality. Suzanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for the intro and for having me.
Yeah. So I would love to get started at the beginning. Before energy healing became the main thing that you do in your life, your calling, you had this full corporate career. What did that look like for you back then?
Well, it was just an extension of the identity that I had grown into from childhood, being that high achieving straight A student, never getting in trouble, like really riding the straight and narrow, wanting to see her dreams come true. I was very motivated, and I ended up going to Georgia Tech in downtown Atlanta, graduated in 4 years, and got my first job out of college. Really, really great first experience out of college, and really grew my professional skills in that environment. And I mean, I really, at the end of the day, aside from the fact that it was a consulting career in consulting, which requires a great deal of hours, I can't complain. I was mentored and supported and molded to grow in huge ways, professionally, personally. But it got to a point where my body began to break down. I assumed that it was the stress of the job, the pace of the job. I assumed that it was because my body could not keep up with what my mind and my energy at the time wanted to achieve. I was very, very ambitious, but just assumed that the travel and the hours and the pressure, the client pressure, that my body just simply couldn't withstand all of it. So after working with many doctors, trying different diets and approaches and health healing modalities, I ended up shifting my career into nonprofit, thinking that a reduction in hours or reduction in pressure, something that felt more heart-centered or purposeful at an inner identity level, would help support my struggling health. So, and I was only in my early 30s when all of this occurred. And that's essentially how I ended up moving in this direction.
Wow. Okay. I would like you to share about your very first experience with energy healing, and when you knew this wasn't just a personal tool for you, but something you wanted to focus your life on.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I moved into nonprofit leadership and spent several years doing what I thought was my heart's work, which it was at the time. It was definitely something that I loved doing and growing in, kind of growing a completely separate set of skills. My health did not improve. My depletion did not improve. In fact, it just kind of crumbled further. So even the hours that I thought would be lesser in a nonprofit space, they actually dwindled even more because of the frequency with which I had to take care of myself. I would have to take days off work. I would have to go to continued alternative healing practitioner appointments. I was constantly in a state of kind of feeling good and then the bottom crashing out. So if I could be completely honest, I got to a place of total just frustration and desperation, really. At my age, it didn't make any sense. I had no family history. It was one diagnosis piled on top, one on top of the other, that was making it so that I literally just could not physically function. So one day, at a stoplight, I was just sitting there. And sometimes when you're in the shower, when you're just waking up from a night of sleep, when you're driving in the car, you've completely checked out. What I know now is that is when your intuition has space to move, has space to tell you things that you didn't already know. And I had one of those moments sitting at that stoplight where I just heard clear as a bell. And this was not I was not a highly, or what I would think is like clairvoyant or highly intuitive. I had high EQ, but I was not necessarily an intuitive, as they say. So this was sort of a new experience for me to sit there at the stoplight and hear the words, "You need energy healing." And I had no idea what that was. Now, at the time, I was definitely a woman of faith. I was very active in my local church where my employer was actually faith-based. So it was not the most unusual thing. That's where I would think that, it was a message from God or a higher power, intuition. You can choose, whatever adventure you want to go on. But essentially where I was located is I was sitting right across the street from an energy medicine practice. And that ended up being where I went for my first set of sessions. That ended up changing my life. So I just heard those words. I asked around, didn't know what it was, Googled it, found the clinic, and sure enough, it was right across the street from the stoplight where I was sitting. So that's how I got into the work. I sought it out for myself personally. It finally righted the ship after basically a decade of searching for relief. And it was the most subtle shift that I could feel on the inside, but it just eventually in layers began to permeate my physical body, my physical health. It shifted so much for me that I continued for a few years on my own, just continuing to show up for my own healing, voracious for knowledge, did not understand how this worked, but it really blew the doors open of my own perspective about the nature of life even, and who we are, and what are those different pillars of health that really allow someone to live a full life.
I'm just stunned by that story. It is so powerful. And what I'm hearing is that your story starts where so many of us women, high performing, lots of responsibility at work and at home and in all the places in our lives where we choose to take on responsibility, which there's a lot. I love that your story really encompasses this journey of, work that wasn't working for you and health issues that were unresolved and, nobody was quite getting to the heart of what was going on or how to help you resolve that. And truly just dealing with all these things and chasing success and running on fumes. I want to go deeper into what this all actually looks like and means, because you just told us how you've had this moment in your car across the street from an energy healing place and heard this voice saying, energy healing. What is it for listeners who are not familiar? How do you explain energy healing in a grounded, practical way that we all can start to understand?
For sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So energy medicine is a rapidly emerging science. It is the common misconception is that it is purely woo-woo and people who are into that are the only ones that can connect with it. And that's simply not true. So it happens to be based in the theory, the measurable evidence of the fact that every human body generates a charge, or there's energy that emanates out from the spinal column and can be felt both in and externally to the body. So a way to connect with that idea is for folks, who work in corporate offices and you step into a conference room and there are two people sitting there having a conversation, but they're silent. You step in at the wrong time and you can feel in that moment tension that you could cut with a knife, and immediately I need to exit the space. Yeah. That's an example of our energy fields that extend beyond the physical body, literally entering a room before we arrive, reading the information about what's going on, and bringing that information back to our nervous system to inform us of what is happening. Are we safe? Is this a space for me? What's going on here? How do I discern what's going on in my environment and with the people that I'm doing life with or that I'm working with? How can I bob and weave in a way that allows me to be a harmonious part of the whole? So not so while everyone has an energy body, an energy field, not everyone's field is exactly the same. Some people have bigger fields, some people have more withdrawn fields, some people are more open and even porous like a sponge, whereas others tend to be more closed off. So that's how you see a variety of humans who soak up the energy of a space, the energy of a relationship or another person. They can become overly connected to certain people in their lives and become unfortunately depleted as a result without knowing why.
Yeah.
So this is essentially what was happening to me. And as someone who does use intuition and can read energy without realizing it, since I came onto the planet as a child, I was essentially accumulating quite a bit of energetic density that was not mine. I was basically mopping up spaces in a room. You know, if someone has something going on at home and they come and they, they're working with you all day, 8 hours a day, in close proximity, you are going to soak some of that up if you are an energy sensitive person or someone who is quite open and spongy, as I like to say. And that is something that you digest. And it gets confusing. You think a lot of times that you're the one having these big emotional swings, or you're the one who is fatigued after a busy day, or it's your body that is sick and broken, when in fact it could often be simply the result of the environment that you are in. In addition, trauma is a really common culprit for weakening the energy system in a human being. So for those of us with childhood trauma, and again, trauma is not just this one thing that happens, an event that happened, and qualifies as trauma. It can be the experience of a child's nervous system that will accumulate this fight or flight response, the experience of trauma that creates disconnect with themselves. It creates an ability to get out of balance energetically in order to cope or survive. This is where a lot of people begin to dissociate, or dissociate as young children. It comes in a variety of forms and fashions, but that is in layman's terms, how I would describe the nature of the human energy field.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we covered a lot there.
That is.
I'd like you to go in a little bit more about trauma because, you said you used your hands to say like, not everybody has like trauma, right? Can you elaborate on that distinction of like the variations of trauma that you see people dealing with? And I don't want you to share obviously anything identifiable to somebody that you've worked with, but I'm sure there's broad strokes of topics that you have observed.
Well, I really like to live purely in the world of energetic movement. And the reason why is because even though I did get a degree in applied psychology, I'm not a licensed therapist. So I can't speak to the nature of trauma psychologically speaking.
Sure.
But through the lens of the way energy moves, that's sort of the best way for me to describe it. And as children, when we are in an environment that creates disconnect, so children need to feel a sense of belonging, and they find that belonging through love. So love and belonging are really it's a simultaneous experience for a child, and that's like laying the foundation of a house. So as children, the extent to which we felt loved and we belonged, that lays the groundwork for the adult that we become. And as children, when there is an experience where a caretaker, a primary caretaker, is not totally present in their own body, or has trauma of their own, or if there's a situation of recurring abuse or insecurity of some kind that creates these patterns of craving, what it does to the child is it leaves them with a sense of not being enough as they are, or there's something that requires them to become someone that they are not in order to receive the love and belonging that they need. Now, oftentimes there are children who can push past this no problem. They become who they're going to become regardless of their upbringing or, the condition of their parents. But then there are some children, like I said, with those more open, porous, spongy energy fields that are taking cues from their primary caretakers. And if their primary caretaker is in a constant state of fight or flight themselves, or in a state of unresolved trauma of their own, any sort of low kind of density, low frequency difficulty, like intense anger or severe depression or ill health that can't resolve, it does impress upon the child that there is something for them to resolve. There is something for them to fix, first and foremost within themselves, again, so that they can find the love and belonging that they need in order to feel safe and grow as a well-adjusted human. So it just turns into sort of this rat race for children to deal with the environment of their home, of their primary caretakers. And if that is a distressing experience for them on repeat, unfortunately, that does create what we would consider low-level or foundational trauma in the energy field of a human being as a child.
Hey, quick break for a second. If you are a sales leader who is ready for your next step up, and I'm talking about leading other sales leaders, becoming a director, a VP, even a CRO, then this is for you. I'm hosting a free workshop. You can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. This is for sales leaders who are in tech and are wanting to land jobs where you can earn anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million a year. And again, you can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. Okay, back to the show. Okay. So trauma examples could be, severe, everything from actual physical, emotional abuse, obviously.
Right.
Even things like, Suzanne, you and I work together, and that's why I have you on this show. I'm just such a fan of what you do. And I had no freaking clue what energy healing was. I had never pursued it or interested in it. And I had also a story of feeling called to find healing that way. I won't get into that in this moment. Well, where I will share is I recall in working with you, one of the things that showed up in the sessions that we had was, I didn't realize this. I had this trauma that was associated to my father died. He died when I was a grown woman. I was 32 years old. And so I had that that I was dealing with. And then I also had this overall, just loving family, no abuse, no, mistreatment, mental, physical, otherwise. However, there was always this pervasive attitude of lack. We didn't have enough money. There was never enough time. Everybody was working. My parents working so hard to provide for us and take care of, all the things you got to do when you have 3 children. And it just felt like there was just kind of a never enough. And that emotion got into me, and it manifested in how I lived out my life and how I pursued my career and all of the striving and all of the achievement and all of the, if I just work hard enough attitude, like if I just work hard enough, everything's going to be okay, because that's the model that I saw of like a well-loved, like a loving, beautiful family who was just trying to do their job of delivering, groceries and a roof over our head and clothes to wear and all the things. Right. So to me that, in working with you, that trauma was if someone would have asked me, like, did you have a happy childhood? I'd say yes. And did they say, were you abused? I would say no. However, when I reflect and share that reality, there still was this lack that
Right.
was pervasive. And in order to prove my worth, to demonstrate my worth, I had to work hard. And I mean, never take a break kind of hard. Because that's what I saw as the
Right.
example of this is what good people do. Yeah.
Right. Right. And it's never ill-intentioned.
No.
Rarely. I mean, like you said, the obvious cases where, there's addiction and abuse and, something catastrophic in the home that can't be denied as traumatic. Of course, those absolutely have profound impact on the development of a human. But what you're speaking about is exactly what every human at some level can relate to. There was a condition or an expectation or the nature of your caretakers that you experienced as a child that laid the groundwork for how you continue to see yourself, the way that your personality develops, the way that you look for love and approval and worthiness as an adult, including the career you choose without realizing it.
Totally. And it
Mm-hmm.
was an accident. It felt like a total random accident too. I didn't wake up and say, hey, I want to be a sales leader in B2B technology. No, I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be like Pink. And I felt like the chances of that seemed a little low and the risk seemed very high. And I was raised to like gravitate to safety.
Yeah.
And where, if you just kind of buckled up and did all the stuff, you could be safe and you could be okay.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's very, very layered and deeply energetic. And a lot of, so if professionals, high capacity entrepreneurs and such, if they seek out coaching, this is often a space where you work with the mindset. So as these patterns begin to accumulate and get in the way or create stuckness, or I can't get quite past this one goal that I'm trying to reach, oftentimes coaches, therapists, they will work in the cognitive space to
Mm-hmm.
try to reframe or move past or rewire the false beliefs, etc. But it all exists up here in the head. When the truth of the matter is that the layer beneath it is the energy. It is the body. It's the somatic reality that literally vibrates and resonates in the cells that isn't going to go away just because you cognitively change your thinking.
Mm. Oh, and that happened for me. I hired therapists and I was like, I was like, I thought I was doing so great, and I was really. I mean, I'm not, but I mean, it wasn't getting the job done. It wasn't enough. And I loved my therapist, and he was so amazing. The one I worked with, when I saw you, he was so amazing. I would recommend him to anybody that I met. The distinction that I noticed was just this access to the information of what was really going on,
Yeah.
and then getting access to tools to help deal with what was blocking me, and what was really creating this, like, I felt like I was bumping up against this like wall of peace and this wall of good mental health. I mean, to be feeling good almost all the time, and to be feeling joyful and full of life and vitality. There was a point in my life where that was, and this was, I think, before I came to you, and then also when I was with you, like, I just, man, I had all the things. Somebody looking at on the outside of my life, they'd be like, you whiny person. Like, how could you complain? You've got, two healthy kids. You've got a job that people would kill to have, making more money than you ever dreamed of making as a girl ever. And you're married, you've got a home, you've got the dogs, you got the cars and the vacations and the blah, blah, all this stuff. And still I was bumping up against this something still just not right for me. And what had me raise my hand and say, okay, I'm ready to do something was, and it wasn't this one thing, it was something else. So there were two things that happened. The first one was, I initiated getting a divorce from my husband. I love this man. He's a wonderful man. He's a wonderful father, but we are not a good fit together. And we spent a lot of years trying to make two puzzle pieces that didn't ever belong together work. And it was painful for everybody, me, him, and our kids. And so I woke up one day and said, nope, I'm not doing this anymore, because this is part of what's keeping me so disconnected from my joy, so disconnected from vitality, so disconnected from love, which is what I wanted, right? I wanted that. And so that happened. And then the next thing that happened that really changed things was I got laid off from my corporate job. And so suddenly I had this time on my hands to, I was going through this huge transformation in my relationship and like who I was. I wasn't a wife anymore. And then I had this other transformation jump right on top of it called, you're not a VP of sales at a big Fortune 200 company anymore either. And so I had this complete questioning of identity and also time to consider what was really going on. And when I recognized I didn't have the answers and I needed more help, I was called. And my inspiration came in a different way. I don't know if I ever told you this or not.
I don't think I know.
Yeah, I was watching a Netflix special put on by Gwyneth Paltrow and her company Goop. And it was just this thing about, intimacy and energy healing. Like I was in a real phase of like everything's on the table for me to learn about and explore. And so this came up in a show on Netflix and I just could not stop thinking about it and about energy healing. And I thought, this is what I need. And I, went right online and guess who I found? You. Yeah. Yeah. So let's kind of bring this. I know I've done a lot of talking about myself, but
not at all. It brings great context. Thank you.
That's what you get to do when you host the show.
Yeah.
So, let's bring this down to earth for my listeners, Suzanne. And I would love, I'm sure they're asking themselves like, okay, this is all great. What can I actually do for me, for myself and my energy? How can I take something and have something that will start to give me access to releasing whatever doesn't need to be there anymore and bringing more of what does need to be there for me? What are some of the things that they can start to do? I'm going to ask you to go there. And let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go there.
So this is a tricky question because I would say the marketplace, at least social media, is pretty inundated with like tools and suggestions and methods for addressing energetic health. And it really kind of gives the impression that it's fairly surface level, that it's just little therapeutic self-care mechanisms that will take you the distance or will be enough. So I just want to put out the disclaimer that again, everyone has an energy field. And if you personally are someone who is struggling with burnout or feeling misaligned, or you have recurring patterns of discomfort or struggle that continue to occur on repeat. So that can be at home, it can be in your personal relationships, it can be professional patterns, or it could just be things that keep showing up secretly on the inside. So it happens a lot where, like you said, on paper, everything, all ducks are in a row. We're checking all the boxes. We're really achieving a great life, but internally we're screaming essentially to say, like, this is just not it, or something's missing. So I just want to put that disclaimer out there that if you are someone who is challenged in some way in those areas, you don't want to just engage with the surface level self-care routines. However, to answer your question, a really good place to start when it comes to connecting with your own energy. Chances are you probably have already experienced it. We're all human. It's kind of like if you were to explain to a fish that it is swimming in water, it wouldn't be weird for the fish to say, what's water? What are you talking about? Because it's just so innate in its function that it doesn't even understand that water is a thing. It just swims through it. So we have a similar relationship with the energy that we literally swim in, that connects all of us, that's in the space outside of us, and that we personally occupy. So you already have a relationship with your unique energy. It comes in the form of emotions, thoughts, a physical sense as well. But if you wanted to start the process of really assessing where you are at energetically and working with where you find yourself, the biggest tip I can give, the best starting point for any sort of DIY excavation is in stillness. So stillness it's a little tricky.
Yes, it is for people who don't sit still. Yeah.
That's right. So men and women who I work with, pace is something that we definitely have to address at some point, because it is sort of that's just their automatic mode of operation. Again, since being that sensitive child who is constantly trying to navigate their environment and find peace and safety, it sometimes can generate a pretty intense pace that we live our life in. So stillness can be tricky because for a lot of people, it evokes guilt. It evokes discomfort. It feels indulgent. It's something that they physically just cannot even access, and it generates a lot of irritation even in that moment. Being invited to sit still or to cultivate a space of stillness literally within the core of your body as you're sitting on a Zoom call or working through a challenging sales deal or whatnot. So you want to both be able to occupy physical stillness and also an internal stillness. So a pathway to that is literally sitting still and seeing how comfortable that is to you. And then you can begin to deepen that just through your breath. So once you find a literal space where your body stops moving, then what does it look like to really pay attention to your breath? Is it shallow breathing? Is it rapid breathing? Can you slow it down? Can you increase it in size? A tool that I really like to give people right out of the gate is a breathwork pattern that will allow you to connect with your energy body relatively quickly. And it's not box breathing. I'm actually not a fan of box breathing.
Everybody talks about box breathing. That was the first thing that I learned on a breathwork thing a couple years ago. Yeah.
I mean, it's just my personal perspective, but I prefer the inhale for 4 counts, the holding your breath for 6 or even 7 counts, and then adding 1 number to that and exhaling slowly for 7 or 8 counts. And you move through that for 4 to 5 rounds of breath.
Okay. I got a little lost in the math, Suzanne.
Sure.
Because I didn't go to Georgia Tech.
You mean you didn't take Calc 5, Amy?
Okay, this is how I chose my college major was I kid you not, I knew I was pre-med because that's what I thought I was going to do. Notice
Mm.
I'm not a doctor. Anyway, but I took the major that required the least amount of math, Suzanne. So yes, I confess I'm not strong in math. I have
Okay.
other
Well,
strengths.
let's just memorize these numbers.
Yeah, give me the
Four,
numbers one more time.
just 4, 6, and 7.
4, 6, and 7. Okay. All right. And what's the 4 and the 6 and the 7 again?
You inhale for 4 counts, and if you want, we can do it right
Oh,
now
let's do it.
together.
Yeah.
Would you like
Oh,
to
I'm
experience
here.
that? Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just
Let's do it.
walk you through what it would feel like in the experience of connecting with stillness, connecting with your energy field, or connecting with yourself. And I realize that a lot of these tools on occasion sound very simple, and that's why we rush past them or brush them aside or say that's not going to get the job done. But it's actually deepening our relationship with those simple techniques that can kick off a brand new way of relating to ourselves. So I just want to encourage everyone to push past the resistance that might come up as you're listening to this idea be explained. Okay, so you want to start, and if anyone's listening, if you're driving, obviously keep your eyes open. But if you wanted to start with this process, you would start by just simply closing your eyes and allowing your body to become still. And sometimes that takes a minute to just let yourself find the adjustments that feel good. And then once you have found that place of stillness, you might notice all kinds of sensations rising up, maybe some tension, some resistance, maybe even a headache, but that's okay. You push past and you begin tuning into your breath. Just noticing if you naturally are breathing shallow or perhaps rapid breathing. And just as you notice the breath, allow it to shift a bit, perhaps expanding your lungs a little bit more or slowing the pace of your inhales and exhales. And then you begin the process of the breathwork technique. So to do this, you're going to want to inhale for, I'm going to count it down for you. Let's inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now do that on your own. Counting for 4, holding for 6, and letting go for 7. And you just simply move through that breathwork pattern for 3, 4, or even 5 rounds of breath. And then once you feel complete in that process, you can once again open your eyes.
Ooh. I feel like it's tingly in my hands.
Yeah. So that is a very, very astute observation. It's a signal of energy moving. When you feel that natural sense of movement throughout the skin and over the surface of the skin or in the body, that is a signal that your energy is now settling, it's moving, you just connected with it.
Yeah. Wow. Suzanne, that was great. Thank you.
Good.
If you're for those of you who are driving, come back and listen to this. I promise it'll be worth the eyes closed moment because it really is grounding and amazing. My goodness, I do want to acknowledge just, wow, how amazing I feel just right now.
Just in those few
Yeah.
seconds. Yeah.
Yeah. A few seconds of just getting, being still and breathing. It's medicine and vitamins all in once. Wow. So, Suzanne, the one thing I wanted to share with you is that, you taught me to meditate with my heart, and I really know that that's changed so much for me. It helped me through a really difficult period of my life, like these huge transition, which is, still going on, but not as intense. Right. And it's something that I use every day when I need clarity. Um, is there anything that you would leave the listeners with that is beyond breathing, that are things that they need to hear and know as they consider, like, is this something I want to look at? What would be involved? And what would the experience be like? Talk about that, if you don't mind, please.
Sure, sure. So really kind of you mean weaving in the experience of
Yeah. Like getting
approaching
energy.
life in a heart-centered
Yeah.
fashion.
Yeah. Heart-centered fashion, and how that really changes everything. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, so good. So, a big facet of my work that I love leading people in at whatever level of depth we happen to excavate in the time that I work with them is the art of approaching life not solely through the lens of the mind, or we might otherwise call that the ego. So again, if we think about that little child who was programmed early about how to navigate the world in a safe way to find and achieve the love and belonging that they desire, the ego naturally begins to form. The subconscious mind determines exactly what sort of a personality is needed in order to move through the world the way that is safe. And the ego is birthed essentially. The way that we stay safe. It's our, I like to say, it's our way of eating and sleeping indoors, right? So everyone needs to eat and sleep indoors. So the ego should not get a terrible, terrible rap. We need the ego. But it can get to a point where it is out of balance with the heart. So the heart is where our authenticity lies. And unless we are reminded that we even have a voice here in the heart, our life is completely run by the beliefs and the ambitions of the ego. So there's a lot of ancient wisdom that goes into this. I was inspired by a female theologian, and I believe she's an anthropologist. Her name is Megan Watterson, and she's done incredible work, incredible writings, incredible research. And she has done so much excavation. I love that word. Obviously, I use it all the time, but she has really excavated the tenets of this idea of heart-centered living through ancient teachings and hidden scriptures from, way back biblical times. So she has brought that to life, and her team gave me permission to actually teach it to my clients. So I love to teach people this art of getting out of the conscious thinking mind, getting out of the ego, and physically taking your awareness and dropping it down into the center of your chest, and learning how to occupy that space and listening to what is true from that space. And often what you hear is authentic information about who you are and what you want, without any of the influence of what you fear.
Ooh.
And the fear is where the ego, that's food, that's fuel for the ego. The ego really is fueled by fear. So when you get into the heart, it brings this beautiful balance that allows you to both eat and sleep indoors and make choices for yourself about what's true, that's rooted in what is actually true. And it's when we learn to do that, that's where we start to experience the fulfillment in life that our whole self needs and desires. It's literally the reason why we're here, is to achieve that heart and mind coherence. And that's where you get into the power of manifestation, and where life begins to unfold in a whole new way when we learn to do that.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Suzanne, I think we're going to have to close with that. And that's a great place to close. I want to just acknowledge you and thank you for being with us and sharing so generously. If anyone listening wants to connect with you and find you and learn more about your work, how would they do that?
So you can find me. The best recommendation I have, if your curiosity is piqued, if you feel like you could benefit from this work, is to visit my website and to consider scheduling just a 30-minute personalized Zoom consultation. It's a conversation just like Amy and I are having today, where we just get to talk a little bit about what's coming up for you and how that might be connected to patterns, areas that need to be worked with energetically in order to step into a new way of feeling so that you can start to feel good again, or maybe even for the first time, and allow your life to move in a direction that's more in alignment with your heart. So I would recommend visiting my website. I have offices in Atlanta and Charleston, but I will go ahead and share that the website, the web address for my Atlanta clients is energyhealingatl.com. energyhealingatl.com. And I do work with women and men, both in person and remote.
Oh my gosh. Well, I've talked so often about the work that you do, and that the experience that I had working with you with a lot of people that I know, and I can just vouch that if you're curious, like, take Suzanne up on her offer, and who knows, you might start yourself down a path of energy healing that will surprise the hell out of you. Which is exactly what happened to me, and for the better, in terms of surprises. So, I'll share the link for Suzanne's website in the show notes for anybody who wants to visit those on the app that you're listening. If you want to click straight through that, and if something opened up in this conversation for you today, I'd love to hear about it. So reach out to me on LinkedIn, Lynn Evans at LinkedIn. You can find me and share what resonated with you most, or if you're following the podcast, Women in Sales Leadership podcast on LinkedIn. And I'm just so honored and grateful to be with you, Suzanne, today. And thank you so much again for all of the wealth of information and knowledge that you shared. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Hey there, thank you so much for joining today. I know you're a super generous person, and a gift that you could give to someone you know, a friend, a colleague that you think would enjoy today's episode, would be to send them a text, share a link to this episode with them. I do produce this show myself, and every time you share it, it helps the podcast grow and it supports the work that I do here. Also, if you happen to be a sales leader who is ready to take your next step up into a leader of leaders role, whether it's via promotion or you're ready to go and get that new job at a new company, I'm talking about director roles, VP roles, even CRO roles in B2B tech, where you can earn $500,000 to $1 million or more. The workshop I'm giving is an hour-long workshop. It's totally free. You'll learn the process that I teach my clients on how to effectively position themselves, effectively network, and own their executive presence so they can land the job and get hired and promoted into these big sales leadership roles in B2B tech. If this sounds like you, come grab your spot. It's waiting for you at my website, amyevanscoaching.com, where you can unlock what's next for you.